doing stuff like plyometric training helps us be more agile on our feet, and it teaches us to be more reactive because we definitely lose that as we get older, being able to react quickly compared to like someone who's like in their 20s at the prime of their athletic prowess. So those kind of things are also important to add in, but I wouldn't stress it if I was someone new to exercise. I would focus on the strength. And as you build your fitness schedule in your life, adding a little bit of the hit or sit and the plyometric training. Again, it doesn't have to be the meat of your exercise meals. It should be like your little side dishes.
Menopause has long been shrouded in secrecy, leaving many clueless, ashamed, and embarrassed to seek and extend support for one of the most natural transitions and rite of passage. Well, the spirit and mood have changed. People are surrendering to curiosity, knowledge, and empowerment. In this podcast, I'll share my own experiences and point of view, peek into the lifestyle and self-care practices of people experiencing menopause, and tap experts for their take on the pausal phase. This is for you if you are one of the millions of people in the menopausal phase or want to support them. I'm Dixie Lincoln Nichols, health and well-being educator and wellness founder. This is the Pause Pod.
Welcome back to the Pause Pod, my friends. Happy New Year to you. Wishing you abundant health, happiness, and prosperity in 2024 and beyond. This episode was actually recorded back in December of 2023, but it's my first aired episode of 2024. As always, I'm thrilled to have you back to listen, learn, and of course, for the support that you provide by tuning into the podcast. If you're new here, welcome and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm super excited to dive into conversation with my guest today. Tina Tang is a Fit at 53 fitness trainer who helps women 40 plus add strength training into their lives for the rest of their lives. She also talks a lot about menopause because her mom did not, and neither did the rest of society. Tina wants to make sure that others don't feel as isolated and alone as she did during this time of a woman's life. Tina, thank you so much for joining me on the Pause Pod. I'm super excited to chat with you about lifestyle and fitness and how fitness supports lifestyle, especially during the menopausal transition, both perimenopause and postmenopause. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
You were a Wall Street trader, jewelry designer, and business owner. What series of events led you to Iron Strong Fitness, which is your current business?
That's correct. That's one of the things I wanted to go over. It was called Iron Strong Fitness because at the same time, I also had Iron Strong Jewelry. I'll back it up a little. Yes. So when I was working as a Goldman Sachs trader, I got to a point where I really wanted to feel like the very few people that I knew in my equities trading department who actually loved what they did. Everyone's there, of course, appreciating the challenge and the pay of that kind of job. And when I left, I actually wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I had always been very creative. And at that time, I was exploring certain curiosities of making jewelry. And I just started making jewelry, selling it. And that's how I became a jewelry designer, which led me to opening up 3 stores in New York City. And about 8 years into that, the financial crisis hit, which everyone knows in 2008, it affected retail everywhere. And especially if you have a brick and mortar store, the business is just not great. And at that time, I was also going through a bitter divorce. And divorce is actually what led me to fitness. So prior to that, I might have done treadmill things, nothing where it was because I have always done strength training. I just started taking classes as I was going through my divorce to just be out of the apartment because it was lonely. I had moved out. And in the gym taking classes is where I discovered strength training. And I would constantly be asking the instructors, well, after class, well, how do you do this exercise? I want to know why we do this one. And I decided to take a course on personal training specifically for self-knowledge, just to educate myself so that I would know how to lift weights. And in that class, I was like, maybe along with my jewelry, I can also do personal training because this might be an interesting side job. And like most things, if you want to really get into it, you can't do it as a side job. You have to devote more time. And that's actually how I got into fitness. I had jewelry stores for 10 years and it was nothing related to fitness. It was very girly, whimsical jewelry. And then when I got into fitness and became a trainer, I created a new jewelry line called Iron Strong Jewelry because it was something to represent things that you're proud of that you accomplish in the gym, whether it's passing a certification. Like for me, that's what it was. Someone who's not in the industries, maybe, when people complete their first marathon. So it's jewelry that celebrated milestones that people had for themselves.
When we're talking about milestones, I mean, of course, you have age milestones, relationship milestones,
Mhm.
and now like we're in this menopausal milestone. I look at it as a milestone. So,
It
how
really
did
is. Milestone
it
in
really
womanhood.
is. It is. And the fact that you are teaching fitness and supporting people with their fitness journeys during this menopausal transition is incredible. So how did you get from having Iron Strong Fitness and coaching to focusing on menopause lifestyle? But before you do that, tell us
Yep.
a bit about your menopausal journey and what that was
Mhm.
like for you, and then connect all the dots.
Yeah. I've heard the phrase menopause and perimenopause, but I honestly did not know what that entailed. Like, I'm sure still many people, because my mom never talked about it. And only post-menopause, when I asked her about it, and she's like, "Oh, let me look when I went through menopause." And she'd bring out her old paper calendars from the 1980s, and she literally found it. She goes, "Oh, I was 50." And I was like, "Okay, that's when I
Wow.
went through it." But she never talked about it. So in retrospect, I can think about when I was going through perimenopause before I got my last period. I was thinking about all the different signs that I was thought originally something was wrong with me. One was I had noticed that my libido had started to decline, but I didn't even think about it. I was just like, I used to never have a problem. I wonder if something is wrong with me. So this is before my period fully ended. It's probably like three years prior. So that would be perimenopause. And I knew I was in perimenopause when I started to have insomnia. And a lot of times people think insomnia is just you have a hard time sleeping. It was, I think, the way a lot of menopausal women would probably understand it. One time I was visiting my parents, and the first night I just couldn't fall asleep, but it wasn't because people were like, oh, you must have been stressed. Or I was like, no, I just literally was lying there wide awake. And of course, I was exhausted the next day. And I was hoping that I would fall asleep the next night because of how tired I was, and I just also same thing, was lying wide awake. I tried going into their basement to sleep on the couch. I tried different and then it was just night after night of not being able to sleep. Literally just like you're lying there and you start panicking, and it just becomes a whole cycle. And I think in that journey of trying to figure out how to find sleep again, I realized like, oh, I'm literally going through, one of the symptoms of perimenopause. And I think the other symptom that's notable because I never had hot flashes, which is why I also never thought, oh, this is menopause, because all I knew from what you see on TV or when you hear people talk about menopause, you're like, oh, menopause is hot flashes, and then that's the only thing we associate. But, a lot of people don't get hot flashes, and I didn't. So the other symptom I noticed, which I thought also was something was wrong, was like my hair's starting to thin, like at the top. And I just thought, am I not eating the right vitamins? Is something wrong? So that was essentially the symptoms for me going through perimenopause. And I think from my insomnia journey, I ended up not getting, that was at the same time when my period was not coming. And then I realized after a year not getting my last period, I was like, okay, now I'm postmenopause. So the insomnia is probably the most notable. Also, what got me really passionate about thinking about menopause, talking about it, because it's just so many things I didn't know. Or I forgot to also mention when that was going on and I would consult my doctor. I had terrible doctors, which I switched since then. But when I had talked to my gynecologist, thinking maybe this is related to menopause, with the insomnia, he basically said, well, you're just going to have to suck it up. He was terrible. And then when I had asked him about should I be getting a DEXA scan, because I think, I'm around that age, for osteoporosis. And he actually said, no, because if you have
Wow.
osteoporosis and you'd have to take the medicine, that medicine's terrible for you anyways. So no, don't even bother taking a Dexcon. He was terrible. So that I think that is also what prompted me to really be passionate, like talking about it a lot and letting other women know, like these are things that happen and you really need the right doctor because the right doctor is going to lead you into how to manage some of the more severe symptoms.
That's so incredible. The varied experiences that people have with their physicians. I've heard so many horror stories. Obviously, you had one of those horror stories of doctors just being so nonchalant and dismissive of
Mhm.
your discomfort that you were experiencing. Now, one thing I want to know is, did you take meticulous records of the dates like your mom did? I'm really impressed with that. I'm like that. I used to write everything down. I used to write the day I had sex, how long my period lasted. So I know exactly what day I went into menopause. I know when my last period was. And so I was like, ooh, especially for a woman of her time, because most women did not even acknowledge, I mean, to anyone else, much less to write it down, because some people didn't even want proof that they were going through menopause. So I love that she kept everything on a calendar and held
She
it.
did. Yeah. But she still also uses when you ask for a phone number, she brings out this tiny little Rolodex thing, whatever you call it, that's, like, handwritten, so any if there's a new phone number, she'll just cross the old one out. Yeah, she keeps
I
I
love
wasn't
that.
as meticulous at her. The thing I was meticulous about was keeping track of my sleep, because
Mm,
when you're trying to solve that and you end up working with a sleep specialist,
yeah.
you have to take notes on how many hours you slept, what time you went to bed, what you might have had in terms of coffee. Did you have a drink? Um, how did you feel when you wake up? So with that, I took meticulous notes.
Got it. Tell us what kind of trainer you are and what kind of training do
Yeah.
you support women with?
As a personal trainer, my primary expertise is in strength training because I think some personal trainers might be more specialized in Pilates or yoga. I think for most part, everyone has some kind of strength training background, but mine is heavy into that. I use a lot of kettlebells and barbells myself. I might not bring that out for clients because not everybody's comfortable with that. But in terms of strength training, you could really be using any kind of tools to get stronger. And so I like coach
Yeah.
one on one and then also small group. And then the small group that I have locally is usually 6 people or less, and it's just strength training. I like to coach beginners, so in my small group, it's primarily women, and I think it's also because I don't know if I obviously do it, but I do prefer working with women, and so that probably comes across that almost everything I do always is with females.
Got it. Got it. Nothing wrong with that. We just love supporting the people in our space who needs support, and
Mhm,
especially during this time. I mean, we need all the support we can get. Women need all the support they can muster, get their hands on. And so,
mhm,
I mean, strength training is just one of those areas that's so crucial to our well-being. Some people don't know what strength training is and don't know the difference between strength training and resistance training. If there is a difference, I don't even know. So why don't you talk to us a little
mhm.
bit about that?
I love that question because sometimes online or in social media, you'll see that phrase all the time, like, "Oh, women need to be doing strength training." I would say they're the same thing. Strength training is a form of resistance training. I guess resistance training is doing exercises where that has resistance. So with a weight, it's harder because you're working against gravity, or if you're even doing a bicep curl, the the weight is trying to go one direction and you're arm is trying to bring it into another direction, so there's resistance. And strength training in general, I think people think of it as something that has to be with big weights, and it doesn't have to be. Strength training, it all depends on where you're starting. So for someone who's never lifted weights, strength training could be just body weight. So getting stronger is relative to your starting point. And in terms of what kind of exercises comprises strength training, it's a lot of stuff that we do in our everyday life. So you can think of strength training as making your muscles stronger so that as we get older, where we naturally get weaker, you have to get stronger since the muscles are naturally getting weaker, or we're we're losing muscle. So strength training is trying to maintain or increase what we have. Things like we all know what a squat is, like we babies squat. We all squat down if you garden. So that's strength training. So is lunging. And you can think of a lunge as, when you come forward to bend down to tie your shoes, or maybe step forward to pick up your grandchild, or to step forward to pick up your pet, dog or cat. It's a lunge, and that's strength training. Push-ups are strength training. Putting something over your head, so you might think just pressing dumbbells overhead, but you will do that in everyday life, like putting a suitcase into an overhead bin, or grabbing a box or something heavy, or putting it on a shelf. So strength training really is movements that we do every day. We just don't necessarily call it strength training.
So basically, it's anything that strengthens your muscle.
Yep.
Got it. Now, you said that because I know I am so into tools.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's one of the things that can sometimes deter me from getting things done because I want to get the kettlebell and I want to
Uh-huh.
get the this. And if I don't have it, then I may not do it. So, what are some of the everyday tools that people can use in their environment to strengthen their muscles?
If you're gonna think gym-specific tools, I'm thinking about when people were in COVID, and I think that's exactly what people did. What can I do to exercise? And I'm stuck at home. If you don't mind having something more specialized, I think dumbbells are probably the most versatile strength training tools. Uh, if you don't have any tools, some of the things that we would use during COVID would be things like water jugs, putting a bunch of books in a bag, like wearing that backpack when you're squatting. Actually, even when people do, what do they call it? Rucksacking? That's like some new hobby. Basically, it's
Yes,
hiking
yes,
with weight on you. Yeah.
yes.
So anything where you're adding extra weight to your body means that your body has to work harder against gravity to move.
Um, I love
So
that.
it can be done in different ways, but it is easier if it's a dumbbell or something where, you can hold it in your hand.
I love that. I actually started this year going to the airport and traveling with a knapsack as opposed to a hand luggage because I heard of that idea of carrying weight on your body, on your back, and that actually strengthens the body. And I was like, you know what? I need to do that because my muscle is fading fast and I need to build it. So, I mean, is that something people should actually think of doing if they can on a daily basis? Like, what do you think about it?
Actually, I like that idea of using the backpack, because people actually wear that in the gym. They'll use a weight vest to do pull-ups or do whatever activities, do squats. So it's another form of adding resistance. So it's, resistance training. I actually don't mind having, if you even did carry the handbag or something where you're carrying, because that is an exercise in strength training. They call it either suitcase carry or farmer's carry. So if you were to
Wow.
do that, instead of using the rolly suitcase, you could carry your suitcase or carry a bag. So that's okay. Anything where
Wow.
you've got to carry that weight without using the wheels will be helpful to you. It's actually what they call, it's also core training. So if you think about, if you have a suitcase on one side, but you're not rolling it, you're carrying it, your body has to work, or your core has to work so that you're upright in order to walk. So that if that was a kettlebell or a dumbbell, that's actually a legitimate exercise. But with the suitcase, it would make it a functional training exercise where you're working your core,
Mm.
but in functional everyday life.
I'm beginning to understand the practical things that you're talking about in our everyday lives that can help us to build strength, to strengthen our
Hmm.
muscles. Yeah, got it, got
Exactly.
it. Talk to us a bit about the benefits of strength training during the menopausal transition.
Yes. During the menopausal transition, and I'm gonna say everyone should just stick with it for the rest of their life, and ideally you do, for how your body changes during and after menopause. Probably on your podcast, you've talked a lot about menopause with different people. So menopause affects what our body needs, during menopause and after. And we know that there's 2 hormones, estrogen and progesterone, that have a role in menopause, but it's really estrogen that has the decline of that has the most prominent effect. And some of that includes how it has a role in building muscle. So that's also why after menopause, women have muscle loss, besides the natural age-related muscle loss. And estrogen has a really important role in bone density, which is why a lot of women are at risk of osteoporosis after postmenopause. There's one stat, and it was from the Menopause Manifesto from Dr. Jen Gunder. She had cited, I'm not sure what study, that 67%, so that's like 1 out of every 3 women over 50 have low bone mass or osteoporosis. And even though I lift weights, I had in my DEXA scan, it showed that I have low bone density in like my hip area. So, and that's just going to happen to us after menopause. So, and this is why lifting weights or strength training or resistance training is important for us in terms of being able to live a good life, being able to do what we want with our bodies, as we get older. We want to build muscle because we're just automatically losing muscle from age or from hormones and the impact on our bone density. And so strength training is relates to bone density in that when we start lifting weights and our muscles are moving in our body, there's a cool thing the body does where it alerts, I guess, the bone building cells like, hey, the muscles are moving. We need to, survive. There's some challenges coming on. And it in turn helps. But so the bone building cells start to take action. And that's why whenever you have a diagnosis of low bone density or osteoporosis, the doctor will say you need strength training. So it helps your bone density, but also to have strong muscles means you support your whole skeletal structure better. Because I think for women with low bone density or osteoporosis, if you break a bone afterwards, there's stats on like how it's harder to live an independent life. I think it's women over 65, if they've broken a bone, it's like half of them won't be able to live independently. And then it's factual that if you've broken a bone once in postmenopause, it's going to be very easy for you to break another bone again. So all these things are very important for us as women in terms of living a just like a high quality of life in our 60s, 70s and beyond.
Got it. It's integral for vitality,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. I went to get my DEXA this year and found
Mhm.
out that I have osteopenia.
Yes, that's
Um,
low bone density. Yep.
right, in my
Was it in
neck,
your
and I was
Oh,
like, in my
interesting.
the back in my neck, and I'm like, "What the hell?
Yep.
My neck of what?" But I'm like, "Is it because I'm using my neck all the time? I'm constantly on the computer?" I don't know, but we're
Yeah.
in talks now to figure out how we're gonna manage it, so I have to see them
Yeah.
in the new year. But I'd
Mhm.
love for you to share with our audience what else you know about bone density or loss of bone density and how strength training can improve that and support us as our bone begins to become less dense.
Yeah. Our bodies, or you can think how just over evolution, is always trying to survive. So when you present it with challenges like lifting heavier weights, it responds by trying to meet the challenge. So by lifting weights, lifting heavier than you normally do, and just consistently making strength your priority, your body's going to continually adapt to meet those challenges because it's always trying to survive. And that's why with low bone density, strength is important. Like I was saying, like in creating muscle, it signals to the bone building cells, osteoblasts, to start
Mhm.
generating new bone. And that probably doesn't go at the same speed as when we're in our 20s, but at least it's in action. And then in terms of having strength in your muscles, it's just going to help you support your body, right? So if you're losing muscle just from age and we have a muscular decline or it's harder to build muscle because of the decline in estrogen, which has a role in building muscle, the way you counter that is by strength training. So again, it goes back to the body trying to do what it can to meet the challenges you present it. So that's why, as soon as possible, if you haven't started already, it would be great to be lifting weights. And like I said, it's not necessarily going to heavy weights. It's starting where you are and what's heavy for you, which could be body weight or it could be 5-pound dumbbells.
So the thing is, a lot of people are intimidated by the
Mhm.
gym. And even more, they're intimidated by weights because they look scary. Certain ones look even
Understandable.
scarier than others. Some people are starting from scratch. What
Yep.
advice would you give to beginners as they get started on their strength training journey, especially if they've never done it and their
Mhm.
bodies are in the 40s or even postmenopause in the 50s?
I'm gonna tell you a story about a former client that I used to work with. We used to work remotely. So when I knew her, she was 67, and at 67, the kind of workouts I was writing for her, because I was doing what they call personal programming, was like 4 days with barbell lifts and other lifts. So she was 67, but she only started ever exercising in her life at the age of 57. So she was already postmenopause, and the way she started, because remember, she'd never exercised before in her life, she just started taking daily walks. So I don't know what it was that drove her to start just taking a walk every day, but that's how she started. And I was asking her, like, then how did that, lead to working with barbells? So after a year of just taking a walk every day, she, I think, probably had more confidence and courage to try a Zumba class near her. And so she started taking Zumba classes. And in the Zumba class, she met another, like an instructor who also taught TRX, which is something called a suspension trainer. It's something you do more body weight. So she, the following year, started taking classes of that. And then she became friends with the instructor, and the instructor actually used dumbbells and, other more, I guess, intimidating instruments. I don't know how to describe, but basically non-body weight things. And that's how she got started slowly from dumbbells and then ended up working with kettlebells. So I think the most important thing, if you don't exercise, is finding something, and everyone always writes off the importance of a walk, but it really is a great gateway exercise to strength training in that you're just creating a habit where you actually enjoy the feeling you have moving around. And there's nothing wrong with doing Zumba or Pilates or yoga as another thing to get into it. In their own ways, Pilates and yoga are also resistance training. It's your body weight that is providing the resistance, like your body against gravity. And eventually, lifting weights would be great, but you don't have to dive straight into it. I think the most important thing is having the enjoyment and the habit of moving the body.
Easing into it without thinking
Mhm.
that, "Oh, I have to go dive right into the kettlebells and the
Yep.
barbells. Let's just
Yep.
start walking and creating the
Yeah.
habits, and then from there, we can just graduate to bigger, more
Yes.
challenging activities," right?
Absolutely. I know it can be scary because you're thinking, "Oh my god, I need to do strength training for my otherwise whatever," because of all the things you're saying about your muscles and your bones. But the
Right.
walking and the Zumba and the yoga, all of that, if you haven't exercised before, is still creating challenges for your body. So it's still good
Mhm.
for your body, like in terms of muscles and bones.
Start small.
Yeah, and I know we talk about it all the time, but it really I wanted that I always think about Susan, that's her name, starting at 57, that seems for a lot of people late. And then in a 10-year period going from taking walks to working with barbells, and not everyone has to go that path, but it's very encouraging knowing that from 57 to age 58, she just took walks.
Wow. I think too, it also reminds us to be patient with ourselves. I
Mhm.
had a talk in my Facebook group today about being gentle with ourselves. And
Yeah.
because our bodies are going through so much transition, and we can sometimes become aggravated and overwhelmed and take it out on ourselves. So it's like, be
Yes.
gentle. You don't need to go do the big, tough things yet. Start walking. I love that.
So other things besides strength training that are helpful for women postmenopause is something like HIIT or sit training. HIIT stands for high intensity
Yeah.
interval training, and
Yeah.
then sit stands for sprint interval training. And these type of workouts really push your heart rate. And postmenopause, because of estrogen is like it's like the magic hormone. It also
It's a
has a
superhero.
yeah, we never thought about it before until after
No?
menopause. And estrogen has a very heart protective role also in our body, which is also why postmenopause women have higher risk for heart disease. Or like I think about people I know, they're like, I don't know what happened after, I'm going through perimenopause and or even postmenopause, and they're like, my cholesterol level's really high. I never had that before. I'm like, did you tell
Mhm.
your doctor? Is it because of menopause? Because that's going to affect it. So, in thinking about that heart health, hit and sit training is very important for us. You can think of it as like you want your heart to be robust. You almost like anything else, you have to give it the challenges so that it can be robust. And the hit and sit are that. So it just means doing exercise that really pushes where you feel like your lungs are burning. You're like, oh my God, this is really hard. You need to push yourself to that levels and not in long periods of time. So hit is usually short bursts of you're working, you're resting, you're working, you're resting, but just during the work time, you're pushing really hard. And the good thing is a lot of group fitness classes are hit related because it makes people feel like they really worked. It's just that you don't want to do just hit. So, like everything in life, you need strength training, a little bit of hit or sit, and then I'm going to bring up the third one, which is plyometric training. An example of sit, sprint interval training, could be getting on one of those assault bikes, or even
Mhm.
let's say you like to run outside, doing a 10-second sprint as fast as you can, and then walking for a minute, and then sprinting as fast as you can for another 10 seconds, and maybe doing that 5 times, right? So you're not
Mhm.
spending tons of time, but you're pushing your heart to that level where it's like working really hard and then it recovers because you think
Mhm.
you're teaching your heart how to be. I like that word robust, where like it knows how to work hard and it knows how to relax. And then the plyometric training is something that I started adding in because usually when we get older, we think, "Oh, I got bad knees. I don't wanna do anything jumpy," and you don't necessarily have to, but plyometric training, I guess in traditional you think of as like jumping. Jump squats are like that, or something called skaters where you're jumping from side to side. Those kind of things really help us in our reactive times because when you envision someone who's in their 70s or 80s and something happens, we'd think of the reaction time being slower. So, doing stuff like plyometric training helps us be more agile on our feet, and it teaches us to be more reactive because we definitely lose that as we get older, being able to react quickly. Compared to, like, someone who's, like, in their 20s at the prime of
Right.
their athletic prowess. So, those kind of things are also important to add in, but I wouldn't stress it if I was someone new to exercise. I would focus on the strength, and as build your fitness schedule in your life, adding a little bit of the hit or sit and the plyometric training. Again, it doesn't have to be the meat of your exercise meals. It should be like your little side dishes.
Ah, I love that. Side dishes.
Side dishes, yeah.
But, it makes it feel so doable. The side dishes are small. You can just take care of them
Mhm.
really quickly without much of an effort. Yeah, I love that analogy. I have 2 questions for you around
Sure.
that still. Tell us the difference again between sit and hit. So hit is
They're almost related. So HIIT would be let's talk about RPE, which means rate of perceived exertion. So you don't necessarily need a heart rate monitor. You can base it on how you feel. So we'll talk about sit because that's the extreme. Sprint interval training means working so hard you're like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna puke. Like I can't do this any longer." So that's why I was saying running as fast as you can for 10 seconds. I don't know if you've done it before, but even near the 10 seconds, I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't I don't know if I can last 10 seconds." Oh, maybe think of sit as you can't talk while you're doing it at all. You're just like it's
mm,
so hard, like, even if someone was talking, it just nothing's gonna come out of your mouth because other it's one or it's either talking or not doing it.
right.
HIIT in definition is more 85% of your maximum heart rate, but you can think of it as if you're, looking at something on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like us sitting in front of a TV doing nothing, 10 being like that sit where, like, you're doing something that's so hard you can't even talk. The hit would be you could probably talk, but it's still really, really hard. So it would feel like an 8 out of 10. But it is hard if you have never pushed yourself to that level to kinda gauge what's an 8 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. And then also it will change over time because as you do it more often, you understand what an 8 out of 10 might feel like or a 10 out of 10. And if you're deconditioned, which means you haven't, really been doing any kind of exercise that pushes your heart that way, an 8 out of 10 will be different for you. It might not be the same as an 8 out of 10 for somebody who's, doing these kind of workouts, for the past 5 years regularly. So but that's okay because it means you're working the 8 out of 10 for your heart.
And I love that because by doing it, you begin to understand your body even more and getting in touch with your own body and
Mhm.
what you need for your support. Yeah. Now, what about people who have complaints like lower back pain, sciatica? I have sciatica. I used to rollerblade a lot and I was rollerblading
Mhm.
in Central Park many years ago and I fell and I was diagnosed with sciatica. Now, I've
Uh-huh.
been able to control it over the years, but I'm always very nervous around certain types of exercises, including HIIT, which is why I stay away from it.
I
So,
see,
talk
yeah.
to us about that and how should one approach injuries like lower back pain and
Mhm.
chronic sciatica? What should they do?
For you, your hesitancy, is it you high impact? You're thinking it's a hit has to be a high impact kind of activity?
Yeah, I always feel
Mhm.
like I'm gonna aggravate my sciatic nerve if I go do those high impact jumping exercises. And I've done it
Yep.
before and nothing's happened, but I'm like in the back of my head, I'm like, no, don't do it. Don't do much of it. And
Yeah.
so I just stay away from it altogether.
So, I'm gonna give you some examples that you can do push your heart rate without necessarily having high impact. So there's a
Right.
few different tools that you can do that doesn't require jumping. But it does require other kinds of equipment though. There's something called battle ropes, which are basically heavy ropes like the kind you see in a tug of war. Um, Using those can really get your heart rate up, and also it's basically your arms doing a lot of the work, just slamming the ropes up and down. Yeah, exactly, making
Right.
waves. So that's very low impact in terms of the lower body. It's just your arms moving and then your heart rate really going. You can also use something called medicine balls. So with that, it can be slamming it into the floor, slamming it into a wall, it bouncing back and doing that repetitively for a certain amount of time. There's some upper body plyometrics such as like plyometric push-ups off of a bench where again it's more upper body. And in terms of other gym equipment, you could also do a hit or sit on a bike or on a rower. So the rower, it's you're pushing off something. So that's low impact in terms of you're not jumping around. So
Mm.
there's whatever way you can get your heart rate really. Oh, I just thought of another one. Setting your treadmill on a very high incline and doing fast walking. So, you know how it's not gonna be bouncy, but your heart is gonna be racing. I don't know if you've ever done like a 15 incline. It'd be like someone hiking up a
Mm.
hill. So that's another way you could do it.
This is so important for people to know because I think a lot of women don't have this information in terms of what the options are that they have for themselves. And like me, they just stay away because I have a treadmill. I walk on my treadmill 5 out of 7 days a week, and it does have an incline. And I used to sprint when I was in high school. And so I would do a sprint. Sometimes I do a 30-second sprint, or I even do a 1 minute sprint. It's hard, but I would do it and then I'd slow down and start walking.
Mhm.
But I had no idea that I can do the incline. I just
Yeah.
never use it.
That's like one of the fastest way to get your heart rate up, like doing having it on a steep
Wow.
incline. It makes me think about the Netflix documentary Blue Zones. I didn't see the whole thing, but the first one was based in a town in Italy, and they were showing how all these people are how many people in their town live to 100. They didn't their exercise was that the town was on the side of a mountain. So they'd be to get to whatever the grocery store, whatever, they'd be walking up this steep hill, walking every single day, walking up a hill. That was their exercise. That was why they
You
were
know
so healthy.
That just makes so much sense. And I had someone who mentioned that to me the other day because I love the blue zone concept. There's one in Loma Linda. My grandmother lives in a small town in Trinidad and Tobago where I grew up until I was 12 years old. And it's a hill. We had to walk up a slight hill to go to the house. And then there's a hill in the back of the house. This past spring, I went to visit her and she comes outside and she has like a machete in her hand. She's 89 and she proceeds to walk out the back and she walks up the hill and I'm filming her and I'm like, she's going up the hill and she's got
89,
her
oh my
boots on.
goodness.
She's got her boots on and she's going up the hill. But that's been it for her. She just walks up the hill because she's got to walk up the hill to go to the house. And then she's got to walk up two sets of steps to go because the house is high. And
Uh-huh.
then she walks up the hill to where her garden is, and she's complaining that somebody cut some of her things and she wasn't very happy with it. So she's going up to investigate, and this is something she does every week. So hills were a big thing for us growing up. And where my parents live, we had to walk up 139 stairs to go home. But now that you're talking about the benefits of walking up the hill, I'm seeing the correlation between the long life with people in that village who live into their late 80s and 90s and the hills that they live on. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's incredible. I'm still thinking of her being 89 and walking up that hill.
We've got parks everywhere, so find hills and walk up hills. Thanks for sharing that perspective. Everybody wants
Mhm.
to have as much vitality and of course longevity as they possibly can, and but we have to be intentional and proactive about it, right? At this
The
age.
perfect summary of it, yep.
So you've got Iron Strong Fitness, and on that website, you have a slew of services that you offer. You're always on Instagram sharing such amazing tidbits about exercising, which I plan on indulging in the new year because I absolutely need it. These muscles need to strengthen. So share with us some of the services that you offer to clients, especially the ones in the menopausal stage.
I would love to. I do personal training like most personal trainers do, and most of my clients, actually right now, all of them are women over 50. And it's funny because it's nice to work them because when they'll like today, I'm like, "How was your sleep?" I was like, "Oh, it's awful. I haven't been whatever." I think it's nice to be able to talk to someone because I and who understands, not like, "Well, why didn't you just go to bed?" Or like, "No, because I haven't s" my client says, she's like, "I haven't slept for the past 6 years." But
Oh.
I told her, "You need to talk to your doctor about this." This is where if you have a trainer who gets it, will tell you to work with a doctor who understands what you're going through. I also do in-person small group training, and that's in Jersey City. But most of the other clients I work with is something called personal programming, and that's where they don't live near me. We have a relationship because I create workouts for them that, depending on what their goals are, that are tailored for them. And what keeps them on it is that every other week we check in on Zoom, and it could be either going over certain exercises to make sure they're doing it right or just checking in on getting a download on their life. And that's not for everyone. That's someone who's probably a little bit more self-guided, who doesn't mind doing the workout on their own, but they don't wanna have to think about, "What am I supposed to be doing?" So for them, I would assign, like, "You're doing this strength workout plus ending with this hit, 10-minute hit." That's where I take the thinking out of it for you.
So it sounds like you've got something for everyone, people who need high touch and people who you can just sort of guide and they are independent learners and take
Yes.
action on their own.
And I also do workshops, which I love, workshops, teaching barbell how to do barbell lifts.
Wonderful. So what do you have coming up in the near future? I mean, we are approaching the end of the year. I know people have so many fitness goals. People set resolutions, some don't, some just set intentions, but some just are continuing what they've been doing for a long time. What do you have coming up that people can benefit from?
I do have a back squat workshop coming up in New York City in February, and then sometime in the early spring, I'll be opening up my personal programming roster because I usually have a certain amount that I can work with because it takes up, my work time, so I can't, like, service everybody in terms of working with clients, so I'll be opening that up in the spring.
I'll definitely share all of that information in the show notes. Now, you are super fit and you're so knowledgeable about fitness in this phase of life, and you support women in this phase of life. What are some self care rituals that you practice for your
Mhm.
well-being?
I was thinking about this. I do tai chi, like the way you do qigong, and it's weird. I don't even know if it's like a self-care. I'm just determined to
Oh,
learn the whole
yeah.
form.
It is. It is self-care.
There's something about doing it and knowing you're doing I don't know what it is. It's a slow-moving flow. It's not yoga. It's in some ways it's easier than yoga, but you're present. It forces you to use your memory because in learning the whole form, there's no instruction book. You
Right.
only learn it by doing it, and then you go and you learn another piece, and then you do it. So it takes time to learn that. So Tai Chi is one of them, and then exercise is I prioritize that. So exercise is always something I have, which is normal, I guess, for someone who's a trainer. And I was thinking about this, the one self-care item that I've neglected and I've felt it in the past couple years is creative time. So I like doing stuff like crafting. I used to go to this place called Little Shop of Crafts where you could go and make mosaics. You would go there, they clean up after you. It's fantastic. I just kind of got away from that after COVID. You can find a flow. At least I find a flow in working with my hands.
One last thing before you go. I have a hypothetical question for you. It is, if you won $10 million and you had to allocate 1 million to support people experiencing menopause, what aspect other than fitness would you allocate it to and why?
The way you and I met, which was at the menopause workshop or masterclass that I had organized with Dr. Melanie Yanez, that's what I would have. I would have national workshops in different cities where women would come and learn from the doctor, from pelvic floor therapist, a nutritionist, a fitness coach, so that like an informational workshop available to women everywhere.
I love that because guess what? That's what we need. We really need the community. Love that. Thank you so much. Before you go, I'd love for you to share where we can find you and how we can stay connected with you.
Thank you. As you know, my name is Tina Tang. My website is ironstrongfitness.com. And I'm always on my Instagram, which is ironstrongfit.
Got it. Any Twitter or Facebook?
No,
Okay.
I keep it simple.
Keep it super simple.
Mhm.
Tina, this was delightful. It was a pleasure. It was informative. It was insightful. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and for coming on. I know you have a cough, but thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise and your love and support for women and their fitness as they navigate this often, sometimes complex passage called menopause. I mean, we'll only be stronger, literally and figuratively, for it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Dixie.
You are welcome. And audience, as always, thank you for listening. Let's perimenopause and prosper.